if the book is not reviewed well, then he is not famous. So he had this opinion. So he wrote three reviews, for himself of his book. And all those reviews, all very of his own work, he reviewed. But they provide the self-portrait of the most crucial turning points, of what Whitman's life. The self-image cannot, of course, be taken at its face value. Whitman wrote the reviews for the public, but though they might not present Whitman in the actual life as he was, they certainly do present him in the thought he appeared in his poetry. So what is very great about what Whitman as a poet is his democratic view of life. What are the major merits of what Whitman as a poet? Truly, today Whitman is regarded as a great poet, not only of America but of the world. And and his Leaves of Grass now ranks with the immortal classics of the world. Whitman is the most autobiographical of his poets, as well as the most representative. He has put more of himself in this masterpiece than any other poet in any country of language or language. His aim in writing was to articulate, faithfully express in literary or poetic form and uncompromisingly emotional, moral, intellectual, and aesthetic personality. In Leaves of Grass, he celebrates himself. Song of Myself also begins with this. I celebrate myself. He celebrates himself, and in celebrating himself, he celebrates America also. In writing of himself, he writes of his age and of his country. And the I means I capital, whom he celebrates in this book is not Whitman alone, a definite who is a definite historical personality, but the average American, the masses of America. He makes at once the poet of democracy and the poet of America. His well-known, endlessly long catalogues are intended to cram as much of America into his book as possible. From a study of his poetry, it is possible not only to form an estimate of his life and personality, but also of the historical developments in America from 1855 to 1880. Despite the fact that he is intensely subjective and lyrical, he has rightly been called the epic poet of America, and the Leaves of Grass the epic of modern America. He is spokesman of American masses, not only who represents comprehensively and accurately the ideas and values of America. And Walt Whitman is a most revolutionary of the poets. Even a cursory glance at the poetry shows that his is a new kind of poetry. Whitman was a revolutionary who appeared in the American scene with the zeal of a born fighter to remove from their high pedestals and gods of the old world aristocracy tradition, superstition, and install in their places the gods of the new world of democracy, science, and common sense. Rejecting the old traditional, worn out, he gives voice to the new urges and aspiration of man and in the age of science and democracy. Similarly, as you find in Song of Myself also, his treatment of sex and love is equally revolutionary. His treatment of sex is characterized by intense down-to-earth realism and utter disregard of traditional inhibitions and taboos. Leaves of Grass is avowedly the song of sex, and Whitman persistently and firmly refused to take out or modify the poem, which scandalized and outraged some of the readers who had failed to understand their true meaning and significance. He sings both of the body and of the soul. I am the poet of body, he says, I am the poet of the soul, in the opening verse of the poem. And He sings of the body electric. Sexual imagery runs through his book, and he does not hesitate to sing of love outside marriage. He says, I kicked the bridegroom, bridegroom out of the bed and sleep with the bride myself. In one of the poem, this is poem, a song of myself, he says, in one of the sections. Even if sex encounters and homosexuality, throughout the lyrics reveal a personality intensely sensual and sexual. Indeed, they derive much of their intensity from the poet's love longings. But a careful reading reveals that all this sexuality, all this blood and mire has been sublimated and philosophized. Like all mystics, he conceives of God as his beloved, and the sex encounters are the poet's meetings with his maker, with his God. He is a comrade who waits for the poet at the end of the journey. The body is glorified because his too has been created by the divine. So sex is conceived as an energy, as a life force, procreative urge at the work of all nature. So how does you know the poet reveal his democratic spirit? Whitman is a born Democrat, and as such, he believes in the inherent dignity and equality of all men and women. In his view, all men are equal and all professions are equally honorable. The individual is all important. He is not sacrificed even for the good of society. Rather, each individual personality should be developed so that all these personalities, like the colors in a painting, may produce a harmonious and magnificent picture. He quotes, a faith in the inherent dignity and nobility of the common man is the very root and basis of Walt Whitman's democracy. The democratic poet celebrates no individual hero, nor does he celebrate himself. I celebrate myself and sing myself, sings Whitman. And the longest poem, The Leaves of Grass, is named after his own name. Song of Myself was Whitman himself. But it's self celebration, throughout the celebration of himself as a man, as an American. It is what he possesses in common with all others that he feels to be glorious and worthy of going out, that which he initiates, which distinguishes him from others, manhood and particular American, you know, uh, way of life, is the real subject of the poem of Walt Whitman. In what the situation finds himself as precious. So the eye of the poem, Walt Whitman's poem, is not a much of personal reference as a fusion of several characters, a composite character who exists in no place other than in the poem. Other poets celebrate great events, personages, romances, wars, loves, passions, and victories and powers of their country, or some real or imagined incident. This poet, Walt Whitman, celebrates natural propensities of himself, and that is the way he celebrates all. Whitman never deviated from his purpose of celebrating all, though through celebrating himself. The eye of his poetry may be a dramatization of the typical American or the cosmic poet. Cosmic means international. A dramatization of the soldier on the battlefield, of the comet rushing through the heavens, whatever it may be and is, the eye is always something more and something less. Even the historical Walt Whitman, the eye is the in his poetry is every man. That's very important. A creature of contradictory impulses and instincts, both good and bad. Sometimes he says, "Do I contradict myself?" Then very well, I contradict myself because I am a man, I am a poet, I contain multitudes of experiences I contain. So Whitman's poetry is not a class, but a poetry in which he celebrates common humanity and gives the world en masse. His sense of identity with the humanity at large is complete. In the Song of Myself, Whitman gives the password of democracy and sings not an acquired of acquired or preserved wealth, but about what will become common heritage through freedom and progress. Whitman burns with great sympathy and brotherhood of all, high and low, rich and poor, noble and vile, thief, drunkard, and prostitute. He chants of evil and good alike, or rather acknowledges them alike, feeling that everything which has vitality to exist has the right to exist. And I say, there is no, there is in fact no evil. He says, Whitman has a sense of identity not only with man, but also with all living creatures. This sense of oneness of all makes his democracy universal and pantheistic. Pantheistic means which contains in everything, grass, everything around, nature and pantheistic. Whitman searches in the remotest corner of the human throng and every paradox of existence for kinship. I am large, I contain multitudes. And this is what good. Whitman's democracy is ideal and universal. He personifies the spirit of universal brotherhood. But he also believed that modern America is the center of science and democracy. Just as in the past, Europe was the center of feudalism and Asia was the center of both myth and fable. This feeling of superiority in America is the feeling of democracy. Runs through the body of his thought is nationalistic, therefore. He writes frankly and enthusiastically. I chant America, the mistress. I chant a greater supremacy, he says. He has nothing but pity for the older nations of Europe and Asia. He is proud of his nationality. His American nation, visualized as the leader of humanity, is the true hero of his poetry. But there can be no denying the fact that Whitman's democracy is spiritual. He is a spiritual democrat, for he says in democracy, the possibilities of universal peace, tolerance, and brotherhood. The human soul has immense possibilities of good in it, and these possibilities are brought out fully only in a democracy. According to him, society could progressively improve and purify itself through democracy. The individuals are constantly tested, exercised, and stimulated, grow strong and better in the struggle. This faith in the regeneration of humanity through democracy runs through the leaves of grass and makes it the Bible of democracy and the truest sense of the word. So Whitman is not merely an idealist, he not merely a theorist of democracy, rather his democracy is practical. His ideal of democracy is essentially pragmatic and earthbound. During the Civil War, he nursed with his own hand the dressed up wounds of America and suffering soldiers. Hundreds of them, thousands, tens of thousands, and day and night, for weeks, for months, for years. So I leave the symbolism as such and come more to the scientific temperament that that Whitman expresses. Whitman is as much a poet of science as of democracy. This is seen in his frequent references to the theories of and inventions of science, in his passion for reality, in his materialism, and in his acceptance of the whole of life, of the body as well as of the soul. The age in which Whitman matured, that was the period, from 1819 to 1881. This was a period of scientific advancement. Materialism was getting very heavy, on this is Victorian period also. The age in which Whitman matured and took to writing was an age characterized by unprecedented developments in the world. Because, Darwin's theory of species, evolution of species that he wrote in 1859 was also published during his time. Both theoretical and practical. The new inventions were conquering nature and expanding and transforming the physical environment of man. Nature was being shown for the first time in all its grandeur, beauty, and glory. That's what Tennyson says in Memoriam, that beauty and glory of nature is to be seen. Nature that in tooth and claw, he says, nature can also become, sometimes when there are floods, when there are fires, nature can also become dangerous to human beings. So his his as well as in all its terrifying vastness. There are frequent references in his poetry to such inventions and their imaginative impact. The scientific theory that matter is indestructible, matter is indestructible, that nothing is ever lost has been expressed in the following in Song of Myself. The smallest sprout, he says, smallest sprout, there is really no death. And if ever there was, it led forward to life. Life. He believes in the transmigration of life, transmigration of the soul, that it leads to further life. One short speed sleep past, Browning says, we wake up eternally. We wake up eternally. In fact, it is the scientific doctrine that nothing is insignificant in nature, that she takes as much care in producing a leaf of grass as a planet, which is the very basis of Whitman's Leaf of Grass. In one of the sections of the poem, he says, I believe in a loaf of grass is no less than the journey work of the stars. To him, a spear of glass, grass is something like journey work of the stars. To him, it is significant because he believes that though so low and humble, the sum total of nature's process is involved in the creation of a single blade of grass, as much as it is involved in the birth of a galaxy of stars. The concept of the evolution of species, which through a struggle for the existence was everywhere in the air when Whitman took to writing. 1859, I told you, when that person wrote Darwin's theory of species came into being. As a result of long process of evolution, man is the highest of the created things, and the process still goes on. Earlier there was theory that man is born because of the sin of committed by Adam and Eve. This is Christian theory. That's how the Bible begins. Let there be light. And later on, in 1859, Darwin came and said, no, nothing doing. Man is not born out of the sin of Adam and Eve, but man is an improved form of an animal. We are all mammals. Man is only an improved form of an animal, and 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 man is to be seen, as an improved form of animal, not like that. And so he says, that that's what Darwin said, that monkeys are our nearest ancestors. It's nonsense to talk of anything else. So monkeys are our nearest ancestors, and man is only an ape, in the sense that he copies everything, stores in his brain. In the process of development, man transformed himself to such an extent that he developed a superior brain, and he overcame the animal kingdom. Animal kingdom is the mammals, monkeys, lions, elephants. They are all animal kingdoms. They all contain, they are all human beings. They are beings. They are called with beings. They are called. So man became, because of his superior brain, he became superior to them. So he conquered the animal kingdom because of his superior brain. So that's how man is regarded as the highest creation, of God. So Song of the Man is the highest creation of things, and the process still goes on. In the Song of Myself, Song of the Open Road, Whitman gives expression to this Darwinian theory of continuous struggle of existence. Now understand me well, I'm quoting. It is provided in essence of the things from any fruition of success, no matter what shall come from some for something to make a greater struggle necessary. So contemporary science has taught him one thing, that the laws of nature universe cannot be evaded either in nature or in man's life. Then he says, to think of me, the law of the past cannot be eluded, the law of the present cannot be eluded. You can't elude you can't escape, the law. And further, that man cannot evade the law that he must reap what he sows. This is the law. As you see, as you sow, so shall you reap. Whatever has been created in its place in the scheme and plan of nature, nothing that has been created is useless. Even the so-called evil has its place and significance in the scheme of things. Hence, his acceptance of the body along with the soul. The body is equally important, and the sex is not to be condemned for its own place in the scheme of things. He accounts for the realistic, free, and frank treatment of sex. He is actuated by scientific realism, in which his treatment of the facts of human life and nature. Nothing is really evil or trivial or worthless. Therefore, he sings of the entire expanse of the round globe. He therefore exerts with science and accepts the sing and sings the material and the shows of nature, the passion for concrete realities, for facts provided by the nature, by the atmosphere, and forms the textures of his poetry. Though Whitman accepted and exerted in the invention and theories of science, he was not a materialistic himself. Passion both of Garnisium. He did not believe that the scientist, the nature, is merely a mechanical process with his intelligence or intelligent and moral guide, the process and movements. He was as much a poet of religion or spirituality as of science. He believed in the divine governance of nature. Divine governance of nature. He was a mystic for whom there was a higher reality, a reality at the back of sensuous thought that is concrete. The soul or the transcendental reality that Emerson had, we talked about yesterday, the day before. This soul or transcendental reality was moral and intelligent, and it was this at the back of things which directed and controlled all activity of human nature. Thus, Whitman's superiority conditioned his specific materialism. Further, he might honor the scientist and exert in the theories, but he considered the poet greater than the scientist. For example, for while the scientist merely supplies knowledge and information about facts, it's the poet who interprets and illuminates those facts. This is very important. It's the poet, who is important, not the scientist. That's what he said. And now we come to the Song of Myself. The poem that is prescribed for you. Section 1, 6, 16, and 14 are prescribed, though I shall be referring to section 11 and 25 also, and the concluding section also in my lecture. So, Whitman's Song of Myself is the longest and the most important poem in the Leaves of Grass. It's a long poem of 52 clusters or groups of lines closely related with each other. It's a collection of lyrics. It's epical in its value and significance. Its title implies that it is as much a song of America as of Walt Whitman. In singing of himself, Whitman sings of America herself. He gives us a panoramic view of the American scene as well as expresses those ideals and values which constitute Americanness. His identification with America and her masses is complete, and he makes the poem the epic of America, the song of America. It's called the Bible of democracy. Song of Myself is also called the Bible of democracy, as well as the celebration of the poet's own self. Self, self means body. Uh, there is a beautiful poem by W.B. Yeats on uh, body and soul thing. He says, uh, the dialogue between body and soul you might have heard, the dialogue of self and soul, you know. And he says, the soul is sometimes asked, okay, you are superior to body, but body has its own relevance in life. You can't escape the body as such. Though man, may say you are given a spirit life in heaven, but still, no one wants to die to see heaven. That's what Yeats says. That self is important. That's the body is important. Body, well, howsoever illuminated, heightened, howsoever idealistic the heaven may be, but we do not want to die to see heaven. That's what that's the dialogue between self and soul by W. B. Yeats. So here also you will see that he celebrates his self more than the body, than the soul. Sorry. So it's called the America, Epic of America, the Song of America, and the Bible of Democracy. Whitman says, Song of Myself is both Whitman and his art and his thought. That's important. There are at least 5 possible ways in which we can interpret the pronoun I. I. Because normally we talk in poetry in the third person. But here the poet who's talking about his poetry in the first person. I. There's great emphasis on I. I do this. I do that. You think that it's ego. It's not ego. It's I contain multitudes. So he says there is at least 5 possible interpretations of the poem pronoun I in the poem. The I in the first place refers to the poet himself. In the second place, it includes all the Americans in their social context and with their heritage. Thirdly, it refers to the natural man who, who loafs and invites his soul to the loaf with him. Come. I, I'll quote section 5, where it says, invites his soul to come, and, I'll come to it later when we shall talk about the text itself. So, soul with him, and who lies down with animal, since like him are guided by instinct. It's a primitive, similar in nature to the wild hawk. Fourthly, the I refers to every man. That's what I told. That every man is included. I is not Whitman alone. I is every man, presented by the poet. Finally, he symbolizes the biological race of man. Biological race of man. I. Thus, I is a complex symbol, an index of the richness and complexity of the poem. And number of varied interpretations are possible. So, Song of Myself is a new kind of poem which shocked and puzzled and amazed the average reader, but profoundly impressed a few discriminating scholars. This was so because of traditional narrative works. It does not possess a beginning, a middle, and an end. He does not say I. The poem begins in the middle, like Milton's Paradise Lost. The poem begins in the middle. That's also an epic poem. Milton's Paradise Lost also begins in the middle of the poem. It says, that that then he talks about the creation of man. Song of Myself, he said, this is also because, unlike traditional narrative, it does not possess the beginning, middle, or end. And it seems incoherent, lacking progression, and devoid of any rational scheme. You might think that the process is circular. Circular means in the beginning is my end. As T.S. Eliot says, our quartet begins like this. In the beginning is my end also. We are determined, to die one day. Besides this, Whitman's many technical innovations, his use of the word labor means common, his compound words and coinages, and his use of the unfamiliar foreign words all come in the way of proper appreciation of this epoch-making poem. However, critics are now agreed that the Song of Myself has a coherent structure and that there is in its progression a logical development of thought and not aimless. It is not aimless wandering. So mysticism forms one of many strands of the poem, complex texture of the poem. As already mentioned above in the poem, also Songs of America, it is called Song of America, the Epic of America, and the Bible of Democracy. and therefore, by implication, the song of daily life of average unheroic American. Unheroic American. Heroes you talk about, but zeros you talk very little. But zero is also important. You can't say zero is not important. So he talks about an average American, unheroic American. The poet sings of himself, and in singing of himself, he also sings of the modern age man. Or he sings of animals. Animals mean people at large. Through singing of a simple separate person, he wants to convey the sense of entire nation, which is America. And this sense of is conveyed through his complete identification with America. It is very difficult to deny that America and democracy are the themes of Whitman's song. His long catalogs, as those in section 15, including the cheapest and the meanest occupations from the president downwards, and the sweeping omniverse lines are attempts at cramming the whole of America into a limited scope of a single poem. Whole of America into a limited scope of a single poem. The poet's complete identity with the masses of America, of every race, color, and religion, from the highest to the lowest, is the subject of section 16, which is prescribed for you. I shall be coming to that later. It's very difficult to deny Whitman theme of American democracy in the face of such strong evidence as we find in the song. Most of the time, Whitman is given to cataloging, but his catalogs serve a very useful purpose. A very useful purpose. They help him to talk of all those rudimentary, common, even vulgar things, which otherwise would never form the subject matter of a poetry. They also help him to translate his broad democratic vision into words. These catalogues help Whitman to identify with the people and objects of the external world. And this enormous outgoing identifying power makes these catalogs vibrant with life and interest because they have become part of the poet's identity. Whitman is so going out of himself and the song of myself to identify with the people, land, grass, water, air, and heavenly bodies are all symbols of democracy in the song of myself. For they are common to all humanity and in all ages and all countries. You know, uh, any poet, is a poet of unaging, expresses ideas, which are unaging intellect. Unaging intellect, which does not grow old with the passage of time. It does not grow old with the passage of time. That those ideas are modern. Shakespeare is modern. Chaucer is modern. Whitman is modern poet. Although he was born in the Victorian times and died in Victorian times, but he is a modern poet. Are symbols of Whitman's democracy. So identify with the people, land, grass, water, air, and heavenly bodies are symbols of democracy in the song of myself. For they are common to all humanity in all ages and countries. By the use of such symbols, Whitman's democracy acquires universal, cosmopolitan dimensions. Indeed, the theme of democracy, brotherhood, fraternity, and equality looms so large in the song of myself that one may be excused for saying that Whitman's mysticism is an attempt at providing a spiritual, pantheistic justification of democracy, which is in the main theme of the poem. Mysticism is not as much a theme with Whitman as in Song of Myself, and an instrument to elaborate his theme of American democracy and materialism. Because he has a very glorious vision of the future of America, and the future has excited him. He is trying to justify that future. And as he thinks, democracy can only be justified on the spiritual basis through pantheism. This merely implies that pantheistic or spiritual defense of democracy and not any kind of mysticism. He finds that the basis for America is spiritual democracy. Some some critics would call him the mystic, others the pantheist, still others, and atheist, but actually it is nothing but a glorification of democracy, of self. Whitman is its original democrat, and he exalts democracy. In short, the Song of Myself is a complex work of art. It's a complexity, is to be seen. It's a complex work of art, and interpretations about interpretations are bound to be as various and manifold as critics themselves. In its spirit, it's also in its long catalog and in its long, you know, omnivorous lines, it is expansionist poem. Expansion expand कर दिया हमने. Expansionist poem. It's a dramatic poem and an admirable piece of the self-dramatization into which the poet has created his own personality. It is both subjective and objective. The poem is both subjective and objective, and the poet celebrates himself, and in celebrating himself, he also celebrates the entire America. So, the most famous of the Song of Myself, it's a sprawling combination of biography, sermon, and poetic meditation. So, biography, sermon, and poetic meditation. This is very important. It is nearly as heavy-handed as the pronouncements. Rather, Whitman uses symbols and sly commentary to get at the important issues. Song of Myself is composed more of vignettes. Vignettes means Vignettes. Vignettes are those images, you could say. Then Liz Whitman uses small, precisely drawn scenes to do his work. The poem did not take on the title of Song of Myself until the 1891 edition. Previous to that, it had titled the Poem of Walt Whitman, an American. In 1816, 1867, and 1871 edition, simply Walt Whitman, the title was. The poem title suggests something of Whitman, what Whitman was about at this piece. As Walt Whitman, the specific individual melts away into the abstract myself. Abstract myself. The poem explores the possibilities of communion between individuals, starting from the promise that what I assume, you shall assume. Whitman tries to prove that he both encompasses and is indistinguishable from the universe. So Whitman's grand poem is, in its way, an American epic, beginning with meditations in the middle of the poet's life. It loosely follows a quest pattern. There's a quest pattern in the poem. Missing me one place, search another, he says. This is quest pattern. Missing me at one place, you can search another and find me there. He tells the reader, I stopped somewhere waiting for you in these catalogues of American life and its constant search for the boundaries of the Song of Myself. Of self in Song of Myself has much in common with the classical epic. The classical epic sense of purpose, though is coupled with an almost Keatsian valorization of repose and passive perception. Finally, he says, he's not very aggressive poet. He's a very passive poet. Since for Whitman, the birthplace of poetry is in the self. The best way to learn about poetry is to relax and watch the workings of one's own mind. While Song of Myself is crammed with significant detail, there are three key episodes that must be examined. The first of these is found in the sixth section of the poem. Where is the sixth section of the poem? Yeah, I have got it photocopy for you. A child said, what is grass? Fetching it to me with full hands. How could I answer the child? I do not know what it is more than he. No, there's an identification between him and the child here. I guess it must be the flag of my disposition, my character. Disposition is character. And of hopeful green stuff woven. Or I guess it is the handkerchief of the Lord. The grass is the Handkerchief of the god, a scented gift, a remembrancer designedly dropped. Designed he calculatedly he dropped it. Being the owner's name somewhere in the corners. No, you cannot notice the god's name on any piece of grass as such. That we may see and remark and weigh whose and say whose. So, or I guess the grass is itself a child. बच्चे वांगू ही है. The produced babe of vegetation. क्योंकि vegetation तो it can, the trees are very long. Sometimes they are very high. The grass is the babe of vegetation, baby. Or I guess it's a uniform hieroglyphic. Glyphic. Hieroglyphic means it's a kind of painting. And it means floating like in broad zones and narrow zones. Grass is everywhere to be seen, whether we are in a broad zone or a narrow zone. Growing among black folks as among white. There is a democracy about grass that way. Kanak, Kentucky. Taco, Congressman, Cuff. I gave them the same, I received the same. And now it seems to me the beautiful uncut hair of the graves. Baba Farid की line है. फिदा खाक आनंदी है खाकू जेड़ ना कोई जुनिया पैरां थले मोया ऊपर होए. So this is something like this. And now it seems to me the beautiful uncut hair of the graves. Tenderly will it use you, curling grass. It may be you transpire from the breasts of young men. Breasts of young men. It may be that if I had known them, I would have loved them. It may be that you are from the old people or from the offspring taken out soon out of their mother's laps. And here you are in the mother laps. The grass is very dark to be from the white heads of old mothers. It's very dark sometimes. Darker than the colorless beards of old men. Dark to some to come from under the faint and roofs of the mouths. The grass can be seen even in the roofs, you could see. Or I perceive all so many uttering tongues. And I perceive they do come from the roofs and mouths of nothing. I wish I could translate hints about the dead young men and women. Translate hints about the dead young men and women. And the hints about the old men and mothers and the offspring taken soon after them. This is how we die. Age nahi hundi maran di koi. Sometimes people die very young. Infants, people die in infant, people die in youth, people die in childhood, people die in old age. So all kinds of deaths take place. What do you think has become of the young and the old men? And what do you think has become of the women and children, those who have died? They are all alive and well somewhere. The smallest fruit shows there's really no death. They are reborn into grass. And if ever there was, it led forward to life and does not wait for the end to arrest it and seize the moment life appeared. All goes, this is what is very important, all goes onward and outward. Nothing collapses. And to die is different from what anyone supposed the luckier. It's lucky to die sometimes. So, the song of myself, as I told you, the child asks, what is grass? And the narrator is forced to explore his own use of symbolism and his ability to break things down to essential principle. The bunches of grass in the child's hand become the symbol of regeneration in nature. But they also signify a common material that links disparate means separate people, all over the United States together. Grass, the ultimate symbol of democracy, grows everywhere. And it's always green. You can't say there's a brown grass or there's a red grass or there's some pink grass. Grass is always green. So grass has a democratic spirit. Grass feeds on the bodies of the dead. Everyone must die eventually. And so the natural roots of democracy are therefore their immortality. Death is also the natural root of democracy, whether due to natural causes or due to bloodshed or internecine warfare. While Whitman normally revels in this kind of symbolic indeterminacy, here it troubles him a bit. I wish I could translate the hints. He says, I wish I could translate. Sometimes the poetry is untranslatable. That's what Emerson said. Emerson said, poetry is untranslatable. You can't translate poetry. But there's Tagore said, for example, there's translation. Translation is very important that way. Tagore said, my poetry is translation, not translation as such. That's why he wrote in English, in Bengali first, and then he translated himself into uh, English. That's called transpiration. I wish I could translate the ends, he says, suggesting that the boundary between encompassing everything and saying nothing is easily crossed. So, the second episode is more optimistic. The famous 29 bathers in the 11th section of the poem, which is not prescribed for you, but I will read with you. In this section, a woman watches 28 young men bathing in the ocean. She fantasizes about joining them unseen, describes them semi-nude, their semi-nude bodies in some detail. The invisible 29th weather offers a model of being much like that of Emerson's transparent eyeball. Transparent eyeball. So to truly experience the world, one must be fully in it and yet distinct enough from it to have some perspective and invisible so as not to interfere with it unduly. The paradoxical set of conditions describes perfectly with the poetic stance Whitman tries to assume the lavish eroticism of this section. The 11th section is very erotic that way. Erotic means one feels sexually inspired. The lavish eroticism of this section reinforces this idea sexual contact allows two people to become one, yet not one. It offers a moment of transcendence. As the female spectator introduced in the beginning of the section fades away, what Whitman's voice takes over. Eroticism becomes homoeroticism. Again, this is not so much the expression of a sexual preference as it is longing for communication with everything, every living being, and a connection that makes use of both body and soul. Although Whitman is certainly using the homoerotic sincerity, and in other ways, too particularly for stock value. So, having worked through some of the conditions of perception and creation, Whitman arrives at the third key episode. This third key episode is in 25th section of the poem. At a moment where speech becomes necessary in the 25th section of the notes, speech is the twin of my vision. It's unequal to mere match itself. It provokes me forever. It says sarcastically, Walt, you contain enough. Why don't you let it out then? Having already established that he can have a sympathetic experience, when he encounters others, I do not ask the wounded person how he feels. I myself become the wounded person. He identifies himself with the wounded man. That's how he, nurse, in war and all that. He must find a way to retransmit that experience into falsifying, without falsifying and diminishing it. Resisting any answers he later vows, he will never translate himself at all. Instead, he takes a philosophically more rigorous stance. What is known, I strip away. Again, Whitman's position is similar to that of Emerson, who says of himself, I am the unsettler. Whitman, however, is a poet who must be reasonable, must reassemble after unsettling. He must let it out then. Having catalogued a continent of X and composed in multitudes, he finally decides, I too am not a bit tamed. I too am untranslatable. I sound my barbaric yap. This is what in the concluding section of the poem. But I stop now. He says, barbaric yap means criticizing tongue he has. Not that he describes a pre or pre-linguistics, lacking any of the normal communicative properties of language. Whitman yaps is the release of cosmos within him. Release of cosmos within him. A sound of borderline between saying everything and saying nothing. More than anything, the yap is the invitation to the next. What Whitman to read into yap, to have a sympathetic experience, to absorb it and depart to new multitudes. So we have this is all that I wanted to say on Song of Myself. But I wanted to read with you some of the sections. For example, opening section, I celebrate myself and sing myself. And what I assume, you shall assume. For every atom belonging to me, as good belongs to you. A small portion of life, as just as it belongs to me, it belongs to everyone else also. I loaf and invite my soul. I lean and loaf at ease. And during a spear of summer grass, my tongue, every atom of my blood formed from this soil, this ear, born here of parents, born here from parents, the same, and their parents, the same. I know, 37, 37 years old he is when he starts this. This imperfect has begun, hoping to cease not till death. I will go on singing and singing and singing of myself. Creeds and schools in abeyance. You have so many schools of thought. Creeds mean credos, philosophies in abeyance. Retiring back a while suffice at what they are, but never forgotten. I harbor a good bad, or good or bad. I permit to speak at every hazard, risk I am taking. Nature without check and original without energy. I believe in you, my soul, and that I am must not abase itself to you. This is what it says in first section. And you must also not be abased in the world. Loaf with me on the grass. Lose the stop from the throat. Not words, not music or rhyme I want, not custom or lecture, not even the best. Only the lull I like. Lull means silence. The hum of your loud voice. I mind how once we lay such a transparent summer morning, how you settled your heart, had thwart my lips, and gently turned over upon me, and parted the shirt from my bosom warm, and plunged your tongue to my bare stripped heart, and reached till you felt my beard, and reached till you held my feet. Swiftly arose and spread around me the peace and knowledge that pass. This is all the argument of the world. This is the peace of Gita, peace that passeth all understanding of the world. This is very important for you. And I know that the hand of God is a promise of my own. Sorry. And I know that the Spirit of God is a brother of my own. And I know that the men ever born are also my brothers, and women my sisters and lovers. And that caption of creation is love. This is very important. That support basis of the creation is love. ਆਪਾਂ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ 28 ਅਕਸ਼ਰ ਪ੍ਰੇਮ ਕੇ ਹੋ ਤਾਂ ਅਸਰ ਪਰ ਜਾਏ ਮਤਲਬ ਜੇ ਪਹੁੰਚ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਬੰਦਾ ਉੱਥੇ ਜੇ 28 ਅਕਸ਼ਰ ਪ੍ਰੇਮ ਦੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਲਾਈਫ ਦਾ ਹਿੱਸਾ ਬਣਾ ਲਈਏ limitless are leaves and the culture of creation is love and limitless are leaves stiffs or drooping in the field and brown ants and the little well beneath them and mossy scabs worms fence heaved stones, elder, mullein, and pokeweed. This is how. The next six we have already done. 16th, I am old and young and foolish as much as the wise. I am not alone for the intellectual only. I am for the foolish and the wise people. Like, regardless of others, ever regardful of others. Maternal as well as paternal. A child as well as a man. Stuffed with the stuff that is coarse and stuffed with the stuff that is fine. Artistic. One of the nations of my nation of my nation, and smallest same, with the largest the same. A southerner soon as northerner. A planter, nonchalant and hospitable, down by the line. A Yankee. Though these are all catalogs. Another with simpler saying at home, a comrade. A learner, a novice. All these things, And then we come to section 40. It is also preferred. Flaunt and the sun of the sunshine. I need your bask lie over. You light surfaces only. I force surfaces and depths also. Earth, you seem to look for something at my hands. Say, old top knot. This is how he says. And then there is a catalog. So many catalogs, you know. You They are important. Loose in the knees, open your scarf hoops and all that. Sleep, I, and then guard all night. Sleep, I, and then are guard all night. No doubt, not disease shall dare to lay finger upon you. I embrace you, and henceforth possess you, and to myself. And when you rise in the morning, you'll find that what I tell you. This is section 40. And now we come to the concluding section. That's very important for you to understand the song of myself. The concluding section is no, the concluding section is the spotted hawk is bird, swoops by and accuses me. He complains of my gap. Gap means tongue. And my lattering मैं लोफरा बंदा. I'm I too am not a bit tamed. मैं करूँ शर्म नहीं आती मैंने. I too am untranslatable. I found my barbaric yap criticizing everybody. Barbaric yap means tongue. Over the roofs of the world, the last scud of my day holds back from me for me. It flings my likeness after the rest, and true as any on the shadowed wilds, it coaxes me to the vapor and the dust. I depart air as air. I shake my white locks. The Buddha ho gaya. White locks at the runaway sun. I refuse my flesh in eddies. Flesh, in eddies means gol chakkar. And drift in its lacy jags. I becuse myself. Becuse means apne aap nu dena. To the dirt to grow from the grass I love. I want to dedicate myself to the earth. To the earth. To grow and grow from the grass. If you want me again, look at under your boot soles. ਉੱਥੋਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਦੇਖੋ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖਣਾ ਜਿਉਂਦੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਥੱਲੇ ਪੈਰਾਂ ਥੱਲੇ ਹੋਏ ਜਿਉਂਦੇ ਪੈਰਾਂ ਥੱਲੇ ਮੈਂ ਉੱਪਰ ਹੋਏ. You'll hardly know who am I or what I mean, but I shall be good in good health to you nevertheless and filter the fiber of your bread. I shall be good in health because my every poet lives in his poetry. Every great poet lives in his poetry. So he is that way important. Failing to fetch me at the first keep and courage, missing me one place and search another. You can miss me at one place and then go to another place. I'll be there. I stop somewhere waiting for you. That's how he ends his song of myself. So thank you very much for your patience hearing, patience listening. Slowly. If you have any questions, Falguni, Sukhi, Maninder, Ganita, and Monjit, and 5 others. If you have any questions, you are most welcome to ask, please. Today I have taken 10 minutes more than scheduled time. So anything that you want to discuss, you are most welcome, please. This is very interesting poet. The question that finally you are going to get is poet of democracy or democratic spirit gets into some of myself. Mysticism, you can prepare yourself, but then it will not come in the examination. Only you have to write about the democratic spirit that Whitman celebrates in the Song of Myself. Yes, Falguni? If you have any questions to ask, please. You are most welcome. Or Mohanjit, if you have any
तो
questions.
ठीक है सर.
Huh?
Thank you sir.
Should we
Okay sir,
leave?
okay, thank you.
Yes, you can leave. You can leave, please.
Yeah, thank you sir, thank you,
Ramandeep, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you, Gunita. Thank you, Maninder. Thank you, Sukhi. Thank you, Saloni. Thank you, Harmeet. Thank you, Samvad.